What does a fish, a paintbrush, and your next science lesson have in common? Stick with me and I'll show you how this Japanese art form can bring learning to life in your classroom. Welcome to Gyotaku for Educators. Many moons ago, I started out at UNCW to get a bachelor's degree in middle grades education. I am currently licensed to teach science and social studies 6 through 9 in North Carolina. But most importantly, one of the last classes that I took at UNCW was Island Ecology for Educators. And you can see here, we did a lot more than read textbooks, and it absolutely reshaped everything I thought I knew about teaching. And so here we are. Learning sticks best when it's rooted in real life. And that's what brings me to my North Carolina Environmental Educator certification. I am almost finished with it, and I hosted this webinar live for some wonderful educators and have a folder full of resources. So if you're interested in learning more, reach out and I'll get it to you. But in the meantime, I have left the classroom turned entrepreneur. So now I am your personal nature nerd. Make sure you subscribe so you never miss another nature based teaching idea. I've left the classroom, but I have not left education. Are you ready to dive into today's topic, Gyotaku? Some of you may have heard of this before, and some of you maybe not. So let's start with the basics. What is Gyotaku? Well, it is a traditional Japanese art form, and once upon a time, it was used solely for fishermen to record their catch. It combines observations, it combines techniques, and in your classroom, it can help promote an appreciation of our natural world. So we start with the word itself, gyo, one syllable, if you're trying to say it in Japanese, means fish. Taku, two syllables, meaning impression or rubbing. Now, if you say giyo taku, nobody's going to hate on you. But if you wanted to sound a little more authentic, you can say gyo taku and combine it all together, gyo taku. Since we're talking about fish, you might know someone in your life that has been fishing before and perhaps like to exaggerate just how big that bass was or whatever other fish they were catching. Sometimes fishermen make up a fisherman's story, and it's really great to be able to show this gyotaku as proof that yes, that fish really was that big. Is this an ancient art form? Well, we're not really sure how far back it goes. But I do want to share an article with you from 1955, published in Japan Quarterly, written by Hiyama Yoshio. Bear with me here. There is a saying in Japan that the fish that got away was a big one, but the fish that was caught was by no means a small one. In any case, it tends to grow larger with the passage of time as fishermen talk about it. A man once told me that he had the day before caught a bass weighing 6 pounds, but a month later I heard him telling his friends that it weighed 7 pounds. A year later, this particular bass, according to him, weighed about 8 pounds. It must have been a modest bass, for it only put on 2 pounds a year. This example shows, and I suppose it's the same in Europe too, that one has to make a good deal of allowance for a fisherman's story. But if ever an honest fisherman wants to prove his story, he can do so by showing a gyotaku, the impression of a fish. Once the impression is produced, even the most skeptical listener has to accept the fisherman's story. The impression shows the original shape and size of the fish, and it has no possible chance of growing any bigger. As a fisherman's record, it is enough for the impression of a fish to show its characteristics and its exact size. This is a primitive kind of fish print, which can be found in the window of any shop selling fishing tackle or at the fireside in a seaside inn, and is often proudly displayed on the wall of an English drawing room. But it has caught the imagination of some people who have tried to develop it into a new artistic genre by showing characteristics by which different kinds of fish may be identified, points of detail such as the number of fin rays, the number of scales in lateral line, the shape and number of spines and processes on the head, and the form of the lateral lines. Having realized its value for ichthyology, the ichthyologists have tried to popularize and encourage the art of making fish prints. When asked to identify a fish, the ichthyologists have found it much easier to give a precise answer by looking at the fish print than by listening to an inadequate explanation from the angler. Meanwhile, several schools of painters in Japan had sought to develop the making of fish prints into a definite form of art capable of expressing the simple beauty to be found in the natural form of a fish. As most of these painters were anglers themselves, they thought up many methods of making fish prints, using the fishes they had caught themselves literally as raw material. Apart from these painters, there were metal carvers, photographers, and woodcut printers who were also interested in making fish prints. Thus, today, remember this is a 1955 article, we have several schools of fish printers in Japan, and each of them is making its own characteristic fish prints. Of course, they are neither pictures nor prints in the strict sense of the word, but one cannot overlook the fact that the foundation of this particular art lies in the beautiful simplicity of a Japanese printing and also in the skill of a woodcut printer. Now, it goes on to talk about some different techniques, but I'll spare you my reading voice. Big picture here, it's an art form. It worked, right? We've got people on TikTok and other social media selling fish prints for ungodly amounts of money, and they're beautiful. And it's fantastic. And I have spent the past almost year working with different types of ink and different types of paper and different techniques myself in order to bring you the most accurate, wonderful, fully fleshed out ideas and lesson plans for how to use this in a scientific capacity. Now, I am not Japanese. I make absolutely no claim to be. But if you want to have a little video to share with your students, Dwight Yang, Soot and Water, is a video on YouTube from 2018 that captures the zen, beautiful nature of Gyotaku without being very long. It's like 3 minutes long. It's a fantastic video. We'll put the link in the notes. You gotta watch it because it is absolutely fantastic. Now, of course, you are here as an educator, and I'm promoting this also for education. So we wouldn't be complete without some fish profile species information. I do a freshwater class, I do a saltwater class, and I've got a tropics class where different fish are what we focus on. And if we're talking about freshwater fish, I love my North Carolina Wildlife Commission species profiles. They are fantastic resources so that your students or yourself can become more familiar with the species. And if you're going for the saltwater package, check out the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality. They have all your saltwater fish resources. Another great way to use this as an educational activity is fish anatomy. So my science teachers know it's like fourth grade, it's like eighth grade, it pops up a lot. Adaptations. Fish have adaptations to help them live a more successful life in the water, like gills, so that they can breathe underwater, the different fins, and they're kind of aerodynamically shaped. So you can absolutely bring in fish anatomy to this lesson because they're going to be working with fish models like the trout you see on my example here. And if we're going to be making prints, we've got to have some ink. Now, I told you I have purchased and played with a lot of different kinds so that I can give you the most accurate information possible. If you are working with very small children, tempera paint is fantastic. Use it with construction paper, and you're still going to get very beautiful prints with lots of texture. If you're working with adults or maybe some middle school classes and your high schoolers, use your discretion, you know your audience. Block ink is fantastic. You'll see a picture here of speedball block ink, very similar to what you would use to screen print on a t-shirt. There is going to be a little bit of adding some water to get the right consistency here, and so it gives it a little more of that art form, because everybody's is going to turn out a little bit different based on more water, more texture, less texture. And there's no right or wrong there. It's an artistic genre now. It can be however they want it to be. And finally, for your most authentic version possible, Sumi ink. It's almost always in this green bottle, lots of different places on YouTube you can order it from, but it does stain. So be mindful of that depending on your age group. It will stain your nail beds, it can stain your clothing, it can stain the tables that you're working on. I have indeed stained a few tables at breweries and wineries doing this class with adults. So be mindful of your environment and your audience and pick the right ink or paint for what you need. Now, I mentioned if you're using tempera paint, finger paints, acrylic paints, whatever, with the smaller children, you're going to want to use construction paper. But if you're using the Sumi ink or the block ink, you are going to use something called rice paper, which most people are familiar with. And it's almost like tissue paper, but you can see some of the fibers in it here. Ooh. And it's fantastic, but it's not even made from rice. It's called rice paper because it was readily available and cheap at the time to transport rice from the fields to the market, hence the name rice paper. Kind of like everybody has cardboard boxes lying around these days. They're cheap, they're disposable. That was the rice paper. But if you want to bring in another aspect of education, they are made from mulberry plants. So the mulberry tree, it comes from the bark. That's what those fibers are in that paper, which can be a whole other lesson all by itself. Now, if you've ever done a class with me or know anything about me at all, you know I am all for the social aspects of any lesson. So I do this as a partner printing. So there would be one fish model for a pair or three or four students, depending on your group size and what models you have. And we do partner printing. So one print at a time. Second person is going to kind of use their hands to help with that making contact and not moving the paper. And then they get to learn from each other, right? So I've heard things like, oh, it's a little heavy there. Let me spread it out a little bit more when I do mine. Or, man, this ink, it kind of needs a little bit more water. Maybe let's add a little bit more water to the ink before I do mine and before you do yours. And it really gets people talking and sharing and learning from each other, which I feel we could all use a little bit more of. Now, I have had audiences where that doesn't go very well. There's a it's mine, I can't share kind of mentality. And it's just kind of it's what it is. It's best to work with small groups if you know that that's the kind of audience that you're going to have. But learn from each other, make it a social lesson just as much as it is environmental. Now, I did a demonstration live for my live webinar, but here we're going to watch a time lapse. So check it out. This is my flounder model, and this is the Sumi ink. Now, you might want to start with a brush and kind of get a nice layer on there. And then I just have these very simple wine cork with a cotton swab, little makeup round, rubber banded onto it there to kind of rub it out, press it out. If you're doing different colors with the black ink, is a great way to blend to get that transition of colors. Also, it's going to make sure you don't have any really wet spots that just turn into blobs on your print. So, making that contact with the ink, with the paper, and we end up with a fish print. And they're all unique. They all turn out different. There is no right or wrong. Some people might say, oh, well, I want mine to be darker than that. Or, oh, I want it to be lighter than that. And that's where that partner printing comes in handy so that they're learning from each other. Now, like I said, I have left the public school classroom, but I have not left education. So, anytime you can combine art and nature, I see more authentic engagement. And I ask for you, leave it in the comments, send me an email, whatever you need. How can we bring this back to our community? So, what is your community? What is your audience? What are some ways you can use this, right? The printing is art and it's beautiful and it's fun and it gets messy and it's authentic, right? There is authentic engagement. You can't buy that kind of engagement from students. And I want to know, how are you using this? I even had a lady that tell me they made fish print T-shirts for an aquarium field trip at the school that she was at one time, and I thought that was just beautiful and wonderful. And then they all have matching T-shirts that you didn't have to pay an arm and a leg for. So, how wonderful was that? How did you use this? How are you going to use this? How can I help you make it better? Here you'll see some examples from Huffman Vineyards in Richlands, North Carolina, one of the places that lets me come in and do this workshop with adults and sometimes well behaved children. But you'll see smiling faces. Clearly, this is an adult group. So, yes, they all had a glass of wine. They made lots of prints. They made new friends. They had a fantastic time. And then I took it to Four Saints Brewing in Asheboro, North Carolina, where some of you might know we have our amazing North Carolina Zoo. So lots of people in that area were super excited to come do some fish printing and learn a little bit more about the fish species that they were working with and the people in their community. And one of my favorite places to go, Hugger Mugger Brewing in Sanford, North Carolina. Now, I have actually here had, because they are family friendly, you don't have to be 21 to get in. I have had a lot of people into anime that will come to this workshop and they end up learning about fish or they end up learning about river basins if it's the freshwater class and ocean literacy principles if it's the saltwater class and stewardship in our tropics class, and they come just because they like anime and they're interested in anything Japanese. And then I'm able to share with them this whole new world for some of them of environmental education and the natural world and appreciate it because if we don't know about our natural world, it's really hard to want to stewardship for it, right? To conserve it, to protect it, and I'm able to do that in this really cool way. And I think it's great. Now, if you have made it all the way to the end, hurrah! And thank you for spending some time with me. It helps me know that I am doing something that needs to be done, that people need a resource that is valuable. So let me know in the comments. Did you get something good out of this? Did you learn something new? Are you going to go order some fish models or catch some real fish and see how this works with your audience? I hope so. And Don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, stay wild and wonderful.